I've been binge watching a bunch of YouTube cooking videos, and a lot of them involve the chef making their own noodles, and I think some of them are also pretty pretentious about it, and they're like, oh, nothing compares to homemade noodles, and you won't ever get this kind of flavor from dry noodles or frozen noodles. So I wanted to eat good noodles too. So I thought it would be fun to challenge myself this week and try to make udon noodles from scratch. So in this video, you can watch me, a very non-professional cooking person, try to replicate their recipes and make udon noodles from scratch. And I'll also be cooking it 2 different ways. So yeah, hope you enjoy. Good morning. It's currently not 9 o'clock yet, and I literally just woke up. But because I want to try to eat these udon noodles for lunch, gotta start now. Let's get going. I have no idea how this will turn out. I've never ever made noodles from scratch before. Yeah, I'm a little bit worried, but hopefully we'll see how it goes. Alright.
To make the noodles, I only needed salt water and flour. 1 serving noodles is 50 grams of salt water with 100 grams of flour, and here I'm making 4 servings, so math. Once I figured out the measurements, like the true Einstein that I am, I added the salt water to the flour in small increments. Apparently the dough is supposed to be bone dry and it'll take quite a bit of effort to knead together, but here I messed up and added some more water because the dough wasn't coming together and I wasn't confident in the recipe I was following. But this definitely comes back to bite me in the butt, as you'll see later. So I would recommend trying to persevere through these tough times and just really work the dough and add as little additional water as possible. So good thing is, after all your hard work, you and the dough can both rest for 30 minutes. Recently, I really got into journaling, so that's what I'm doing in my 30 minutes. I've started doing morning pages, which sounds like a romantic concept, but realistically just consists of me complaining to myself and validating my own emotions. And after my own private therapy session, it's time to knead the dough, except with your feet. Make sure your feet are nice and warmed up and do some feet stretches. Okay, no, obviously that's unnecessary, but apparently this is a traditional Japanese method of kneading udon, and I was super excited to try it. I even put on my nice socks just for you guys. Stepping on the dough definitely felt very uncomfortable at first, and I was pretty concerned that the bag would break, or maybe the dough would just flatten into a sheet of paper under my weight, like Flat Stanley. But this is really fun, and after decently flattening it, I folded the dough up and repeated the process 3 more times. The recipe I was following said the dough should be as soft as a baby's earlobe, which is a rather difficult comparison for me. I don't know about you, but I can't remember the last time I touched a baby's ear. Anyway, so every time I stepped on the dough, I imagined stepping on a baby's ear and tried to compare it, and when it felt similar enough in my head, I stopped. Huge shout out to my feet for pulling through in this video, but after getting more steps in than I have all week, I took a 2-hour break and also let the dough just chill out.
2 hours later.
And now for the actual shaping of the noodles. Dust everything with starch because you don't want any of your hard work to be sticking to where it does not belong. I rolled the dough as rectangular as possible and aimed for a good noodle thickness. The recipe I was following said 1/8 of an inch, but I'm just trying my best out here. After that, more dusting, and I folded it into an accordion. This reminded me a lot of the paper fans I used to fold as a kid, and I think this folding this way helps you cut even noodles. And now, time for the cutting. Remember how I said I added too much water? So because of that, the dough was really squishy and it was really hard for it to maintain its shape while cutting. And I've also never cut noodles before, so it was really hard for me to cut even widths anyway. But after cutting, I unraveled the noodle to find uneven squiggles. I tried my best to even them out, and some were definitely in much better shape than others, but this is what they look like in the end. I was super proud of this, even if they're definitely far from perfect. To cook the noodles, I boiled them for 12 minutes, and in the meantime, now for the soup. I made a traditional dashi broth using seaweed and shiitake mushrooms, and I boiled them together, and after the seaweed became soft, I took it out and added bonito flakes, which is not an ingredient I'm familiar with, and turned off the heat and let the broth sit for 10 minutes. I also added some soy sauce, some mirin, and some sugar for additional flavor, and here's what it looks like. Okay, fine. Is the bok choy traditional? No, but I really like eating my greens in my noodle soups, so whatever tastes the best to me, right? And I topped with cilantro and green onion. And The noodles had an amazing texture, even though they did end up being way thicker than any udon I'd ever eaten before. I was really shocked the noodles expanded so much after being cooked, so I guess keep that in mind. I did notice a slightly weird aftertaste in the noodles. I think it's maybe because the flour I was using had absorbed some of the other flavors while sitting in my pantry. And since flour is really the only star of this udon show, it's really important that it's fresh. Nonetheless, this was really good. Here's me enjoying my food that you can't eat. And now it's day 2, time for the yakiudon. I was super excited to make this because I love stir-fried noodles. You can probably use any veggies for this, but I had onions and carrots in the fridge, and I also chopped up some garlic. Poorly, but I chopped it. In the meantime, time to cook the noodles. I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea to put the frozen block of noodles directly into the water without defrosting it first. Clearly, they did not separate. I realized as soon as I put in the noodle cube that this was a terrible idea. I did a lot of forced chopstick separation and broke quite a few noodles in the process, and ended up performing a last-minute rescue by pulling the lump back out of the water to separate. But I did manage to mostly have a nice bowl of noodles rather than clumps. Onto the stir fry. So I added the garlic to the oil, and when it started smelling delicious, I threw in the onions and carrots. I also tore apart a cabbage leaf because cabbage is my favorite thing of all time, and I was too lazy to use a cutting board. I think the traditional yakiudon recipe usually calls for pork belly, which I love, but I didn't have it, so here I'm just using some ground pork. And after everything is nice and cooked, I added the noodles. It's really important to stir frequently here to make sure the noodles don't stick to the pan. And to season, I added some soy sauce and some more mirin and topped with some green onions. And it's delicious! It was so colorful and flavorful, and the noodles were chewy, and I just loved everything about this. Everything about this.
This whole process is actually a lot easier than I expected, so maybe those chefs are up to something. Granted, mine definitely did not turn out perfectly, but it still tasted good even if it didn't look super presentable. Overall, I think I'll definitely be making this again, especially now that I know where my mistakes are. I can try to add less water and defrost it properly and practice my cutting noodles into even chunks because mine looks kind of like this. Overall, I had a ton of fun with this, and I think I'll be trying to make more noodle recipes in the future. If you guys have ever made any noodles from scratch, please let me know. I would definitely love to hear any tips that I can get. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye!